can use it as a resource in the future. So just letting everybody know. We're really pleased to see you all here for this really, I think, engaging webinar that we're planning to have to really share some great ideas on fostering engagement with your data users. This webinar is actually a collaboration between the Census Information Centers and the state data centers. This kind of came from, I guess, discussions with a lot of our members saying, we're always just continuing to explore ideas and think of innovative ways and helpful tips on how to engage with our data users and community members. So we will have some presenters today and a question and answer at the end of the webinar. So if during the presentations you have a question that comes to mind, feel free to put it in the chat. I have my fellow SDC Steering Committee colleague, Michael Moser, who will be monitoring that chat as well. So we're going to hold on to all the questions kind of towards the end of our presentations today. So thanks again for joining us. And at this point, I'm going to have our fearless leaders, our CIC and SDC steering committee chairs welcome their members and just say a few words. So I'm going to turn it over to Doug.
All right, thanks for having me. And I just want to say welcome to everyone. It's good to see people, at least virtually, if not in person. If we have any census people on here listening, this is kind of a direct result of us actually meeting face to face back in, was that August, July? It all runs together these days. There was talk that it would be nice to have more CIC, SDC coordination and cooperation. And so this is kind of the first step out of that. And just want to thank the CICs who agreed to presenting today. And I hope you guys enjoy this. And I hope it's the first of many collaborations.
Thanks, Doug. And I'll have Mallory say a few words. Mallory?
So thanks. I'm Mallory Bateman. I'm over in Utah. And big thanks to Monica for kind of stepping up and taking the reins with this idea and running with it, and then reaching out and connecting with everybody. I'm really appreciative for the work you've put in. I'll also make a plug for the SDC members for the Gustafson Award nominations. If you have anyone you want to nominate, send those nominations our way. And if this makes you excited and you're like, I would love to be on the steering committee next year, we have a couple open spots maybe. So let Michael or myself know if you're interested, and we can make sure you have the materials for the nominations. So thanks, Monica, for putting this together, and Melanie and Angeline for your involvement in this. I'm excited to hear from you.
Awesome. Yes. Join us. We have a lot of fun. We're a fun group. So all right. Well, we have three of us are presenting just to share some wisdom and ideas on, how to engage with your stakeholders and data users. So we're going to kick this off with Melanie Poulter. Melanie serves as the Tulsa Area United Way's Research and Data Director. She's a CIC member. So as Tulsa Area's Research and Data Director, Melanie leads efforts on research projects, including the just released Community Insights Report, the impact of COVID-19 on children and youth in the Tulsa area, United Way region, and the organization's Living Wage Presentation Simulation. She collaborates with many key local organizations, businesses, and governmental entities to elevate data-informed thinking and decision-making. Melanie represents the Tulsa Area United Way in the U.S. Census Bureau's CIC network and is passionate about using data for good. So glad to have you here, Melanie.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all for being here. So I'm going to see if I can share my slides. I should have already had this figured out, but okay. Am I sharing properly, and is it in?
Yes.
the right mode? Okay, good.
Yes.
Good deal. So as we've talked about before, there's not one particular way to engage stakeholders. You know, we all have our own environments that we work in, our own resources available, our own sets of skills, and even the organization or the agency that we are hosted by or within, you know, has their own focal areas and their own mission. So many different ways to do this. So I'm just going to bring up kind of some key examples of how we engage the community in the Tulsa area. So I wanted to start with just kind of these 3 topic areas as things that you want to consider when you are trying to engage the community and reach data stakeholders in your area. So what resources are available to you? And specifically what I'm talking about here is even finding out who the data stakeholders or potential data stakeholders in your community are. How do you find that out? Collaboration efforts, who else is doing data work, or even just appreciates the value of data in your community, so that you might develop collaboration efforts with them, and engagement and learning opportunities. Be creative about developing learning opportunities that data stakeholders will be interested in. So starting with resources for identifying data stakeholders. In Oklahoma, and I'm not sure if this is in every state, I imagine it is some form of this, but we have the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. Because I'm with a United Way, and because I'm a CIC, many CICs do focus on nonprofits. Many of us are nonprofits, and we most largely deal with other nonprofits. I know the folks in the colleges and universities are probably somewhat different, but as my example, nonprofits are who I mostly am dealing with. So I might go to the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits. They actually have a member list of, you know, over 900 different agencies that are associated with them, to give me a good start on who's even doing business in the Tulsa area, and you know, who might have data folks there. Also, your local United Way. So for the Tulsa Area United Way, we have partnerships with dozens, 60 to 70 something nonprofits in the Tulsa area specifically, and we provide a list of and contact information of who those are. So in your area, your United Way would be a great resource for finding out who the nonprofits in your area might be, and should be able to reach out to them and see if they have an interest in partnering or learning more about availability of data. And for instance, here's just from our website, the Tulsa Area United Way. You know, this is 2 of our many partners. You can find out who they are, how to contact them, and kind of what they do. Also, your state data center, if for those CICs that are on the call, if you don't already collaborate with your state data center, you should. And I will say I did much more in the past. I did meet up with I can't even think of his name, Adwin, sorry, from Oklahoma, at our conference, and we had a great chat, and tend to kind of revive that relationship. But you know, great partnerships possible there. And there's many of you probably know John Chappie from the Oklahoma State Data Center. So expand your reach. In addition to finding out what those resources are, how you could even find out who potential partners and data stakeholders are. Expand your reach and capacity. What's the best way to do that? Collaborate, 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 right? You can't do it all yourself, and you don't have all the answers. You probably are seen as the data expert or the key data expert in your area, in your region. But there are many other kinds of data. You know, we love census data, but other data help just complement what we can get with census data. So think in terms of who are potential partners out there in your community that you could leverage to bring together a more comprehensive opportunity for your data stakeholders. Think in terms of maybe funders who could help fund events or businesses, other nonprofits, if you're a nonprofit organization that have a strong data focus. All of those are potential areas. You can multiply the resources by collaborating with others. So and then you want to offer some great engagement and learning opportunities. You know, you can do this all year round. So for instance, something we actually just did in the Tulsa area just a couple of weeks ago, this was our second annual, what we called a data field trip. So it kind of has a school feel, a school tone. It really had nothing to do with schools. Tulsa Public Schools is one of the collaborators on planning this event, but we just thought that was a kind of a fun theme, and it fits, and it, you know, it made it just a nice fun theme. But so Tulsa Area United Way collaborated with GKFF, which is a local private funder, and they're actually the ones who were the lead partner on this, and they funded the event. Tulsa Health Department was included, Impact Tulsa, which is a local kind of education think tank and planning organization, and then Tulsa Public Schools. So kind of lots of different areas of focus came together to bring our resources, to bring our different data stakeholders that we worked with together for this full day event that was extremely well attended. I think we had like 140 sign up for it. We had almost 130 actually attend for a full day of nothing but talking about and hearing about data and what people in the area are doing with data in different ways. So fun event. It's doable in your community as well. And you will find that you have data people just kind of coming out of the woodwork that you didn't even know about, that are ready to learn more and to share what they're doing with data. So here's a picture of, this is when our keynote speaker was talking. We had it at this really cool lodge that's kind of out in the woods near Tulsa. But again, it was really engaging, really positive feedback from attendees. We also had a morning and afternoon set of learning sessions that people could choose and attend. We also did a poster session. So we invited people to do we made it like a science fair theme. Had people there's Dolly. You see Dolly Parton there? She came. So there were picture opportunities with her picture. So, but we made it like an old kind of middle school science fair type of poster. So it was kind of fun. So also, and I think I have mentioned this in previous presentations, and I think some of you are aware of the Equality Indicators Project. Tulsa does an Equality Indicators Project. We actually just found out, Tulsa Area United Way, that we were selected. We put in a proposal. We're going to work with the city of Tulsa to produce the next report, which will come out next spring. But that is that's a city of Tulsa owned project. So collaboration with them, there will be great collaboration with them after the report is produced to engage community on many different fronts to share the findings from that. Huge amount of census data in the equality indicators reports. But again, not just census data. We leverage other data as well and to complement that. We have an organization called Leadership Tulsa that is kind of an incubator for upcoming people who want to be in leadership positions in the Tulsa area, either in nonprofits or businesses or government. So we also collaborate with them to share about equality indicators. We also used it in combination with the Tulsa Race Massacre Beyond Apology collective action series to help people understand what disparities still exist in Tulsa among certain populations that potentially as a result of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which was over 100 years ago. So just some examples of ways that we collaborate and we engage with data stakeholders to offer them things that that they are interested in learning about. So another engagement and learning opportunities, just putting on workshops, how to access census data. So host your own. Certainly use the DDS team, Census Bureau's DDS team, to host, a huge range of census related workshops that are free to people. People love free and they're getting something out of it. And also partner with other data specialists. So again, don't just offer census data necessarily, offer census data and maybe educational data, academic achievement data or health data or something like that. It doesn't have to just be your data. And I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you. I don't want to take too much time, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I'll be glad to talk with you later. Thanks.
Thank you. That's great, Melanie. Thanks so much for sharing those really great tips. I'm sure there might be some follow-up questions from our audience, from our participants today that might want to follow up. But I'm going to transition over to another great speaker and presenter today, who I'm really pleased to welcome Angeline Echeverria. She is the director. They are director of the Partnership for NC North Carolina Counts Coalition, and so Angeline is a coordinating member, recruitment and capacity building, and supporting through their work the Census 365 health equity and redistricting efforts with NC Counts. Angeline is a passionate advocate for immigrant and worker rights, reproductive justice, and intergenerational organizing. Prior to joining NC Counts, Angeline served as the executive director for El Pueblo and co-founded their 501c4 affiliated organization. And prior to working with El Pueblo, Angeline served in different capacities for women's and immigrant workers organizing in the Southeast and beyond. So we're really pleased to have Angeline. She's Nancy Counts, I understand, is a new member of the CIC network, and certainly recruited to come in and join the network to share their great wealth of information, all the great work they've been doing through their coalition. So I'll hand it over to Angeline.
Thank you so much. It's exciting to be here today as a new CIC to be able to present to the group. Monica, can you confirm that my slides are showing up okay?
They are good. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. So NC Counts Coalition, we just became a CIC, I think late last year. So this year was our first time attending the annual conference and have really enjoyed getting to know all the other CIC members and the State Data Center Network partners. I'm going to share a little bit about NC Counts Coalition and our mission, since we're just getting to know the CIC network. Share a little bit about how we were founded and the efforts that we led for the 2020 census, how we're implementing those lessons learned now, and then just some tips for new CIC members like us. Our mission is to build a healthy, just, and equitable North Carolina through cross-sector partnerships that advance systemic solutions for communities that face systemic barriers. So this includes Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, LGBTQ plus communities, low wealth, immigrant, and other communities that are traditionally undercounted in census efforts. NC Counts was actually founded specifically to work on the 2020 census. And originally, the organization was going to devolve. It was seen as more like, this is our 2020 census campaign. And then once the 2020 census was over, we were going to pack it up and just let someone else prepare for 2030. So the last couple of years have really been a time of transition for our organization as we've become a more permanent presence in the state. And we have three focus areas. I'm obviously going to talk more about census work than I am about the other two. But I do just want to mention that with respect to our work around civic engagement and representation, as well as recovery and resiliency, every type of program that we do at NC Counts, we try to let data be at the core of that. So for example, our civic engagement work is really centered around how decennial census data is used in redistricting, the ways in which the census count, whether, for example, incarcerated people are counted in their home communities or are counted at the site of their incarceration. What are the impacts of how that data is collected on communities, and specifically communities of color across the state? And then with recovery and resiliency, we have done a lot of work around COVID response, and one of the things that we used to guide that work was looking at the census tracts with the highest indicators of the social vulnerability index, which the CDC pulls together with ACS data. And then with digital equity, we've really been looking at the ACS data in terms of where are there gaps in broadband access across the state, and how can we increase equity in terms of digital access, both using census data to guide those efforts, but also hoping that by having better digital equity across the state, we'll have more accurate counts in the ACS and just future decennial census, et cetera. Okay, when we were founded, our goal was to ensure a complete and accurate 2020 census count for North Carolina. And we had three major strategies with that, which are the strategies that continue to guide our work today. One was building cross-sector partnerships. And so at that time, we had what we called the North Carolina Census Task Force, which was over 100 nonprofit organizations across the state that would meet regularly to get updates about what was happening with the decennial census, create resources together, and just serve as a hub for nonprofits. Similar to what Melanie was mentioning, we also worked closely with the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits on that, and they were one of the partners in that convening. We would have in-person convenings, pre-COVID, where we would get people together across the state. And when we would have those convenings, we would have specific information for nonprofits, for local and state elected and public officials, and then also for businesses. We definitely feel like we could improve our work in terms of engaging business communities. So I'm just going to put that as a plug here. If any of y'all are doing great work on that, I'd love to learn from you. We also work to provide resources for trusted messengers. We serve as an intermediary organization, so we actually do raise funds that we re-grant to members of our coalition. But even if that's not a part of what you do, looking at the counties in the state and seeing where are they gaps, where they're likely to be undercounted community members, whether that's due to the rural nature of those counties or the fact that they have high concentrations of communities of color or other groups that are traditionally undercounted, it can be a way to guide your work. And then our whole thing as a coalition is that we really prioritize recruiting coalition members that are where the organizations are led by and accountable to communities that are traditionally undercounted. And then the third strategy is really just providing accurate and updated information. With the 2020 census specifically, or the decennial, there's so many resources and so much information that we really tried to curate those things. And then if we were creating new resources, we were doing it in a way that it was really specifically responding to a community request in the state. After the census, after the decennial, we did come out with a report with our lessons learned. And I'm going to just highlight these briefly. And I'm dropping in the chat a link to the full report where you can see kind of the breadth of work that our coalition partners did during the 2020 census. One of the most important lessons that I think we all learned was just the importance of flexibility and pivoting. Doing a decennial census during a presidential election year and a global pandemic definitely required a lot of us to shift our plans. So many of our partners did things like moving their in-person events to Zoom. Car caravans became a major tactic. Incorporating census outreach to other activities that were meeting immediate needs in the community, such as food distribution, mask and hand sanitizer distribution, and then for folks that were experiencing distress or laid off, things like that, when they were accessing services at organizations, ensuring that they had information about how to get counted. The groups that we collaborated with really emphasized that being able to explain the importance and telling a story that was compelling about the census and how it connected to people's lives was very important. And then language justice has been an important piece of our work. So in working through trusted messengers, organizations that already were respected in community, they often had the language and cultural capacity to speak directly to the community members that we were trying to get counted. In addition to that, NC Counts, when we host events, we always provide interpretation, simultaneous interpretation and information in both English and Spanish, which is the language that is predominant among more of our member organizations. But when we can, we do partner specifically with Asian and Pacific Islanders serving organizations in the state to provide information and tools in other languages. Other lessons that I don't have to tell you all: plan early for getting out the count. And then also a tip to our funders, and we do use this report and our lessons learned as an opportunity to do outreach to funders and build resources for our state and for our work, is that the funding has to come early. I mean, in 2020, we received a lot of last minute funding as the census operation timeline was changing. And some of that funding really, if it had just come through earlier, we and mostly our community-based organizations across the state could have taken better advantage of it and been more strategic with that. And then the last lesson was just, we can't wait until there's a decennial census to talk about the importance. And so that's really what our work is focused on now. And I'll spend the rest of the time just talking about how we're doing things today. So how do we make the census a permanent part of our work at NC Counts? Capacity building. So our coalition, we have about 132 organizations across North Carolina. And so we work with them to we have quarterly partner meetings. And so typically at our quarterly partner meetings, we always include some information about recent census developments, whether that's a data release. When the post-enumeration survey results came out, we talked about that. Our data dissemination specialist has come and done a presentation with us on the economic census when that was happening. So just thinking about what's going on that could be relevant and interesting to coalition partners that we can incorporate into our regular events. And then we have also developed some tools. A lot of the groups that we work with, in addition to doing maybe direct service provision or census work, they also are interested in civic engagement or voter engagement. So we were able to work with Carolina Demography, who is a member of the state data center here, to create a mapping tool that combined ACS data with State Board of Elections data, which are, two data sets that don't necessarily talk to each other. And so that's a tool that some of our members have used for kind of planning and prioritizing their voter engagement efforts. And so we do workshops that are kind of on demand, like a member organization can say, hey, Angeline, I want an ACS presentation in Spanish about these 5 counties in Western North Carolina. And we'll be like, okay, I need to work out the Spanish version, but I got you. And I hit up Kelly, our data dissemination specialist, to get some information that I could pass along. And we also do group trainings through in-person or just either our quarterly events or our in-person convening. We also engage our members in just promoting improvements to the census. So every time one of those FRN comes out, Federal Register notices, and particularly when they are things that are likely to impact communities of color, or there's just like, whether it was the one about the 2030 research agenda, or we did a presentation to the OMB group that is looking to update the race and ethnicity standards, just taking advantage of the opportunities that we have to inform how the Bureau is leading their efforts. And then monitoring and education, sharing practical applications. One of the things that our partner organizations have really been interested in is just hearing from each other about how they're keeping the census message alive in not as popular census years, and how they're using data for their work across the state. The other aspect of our work is looking at redistricting as kind of one of the most important, not one of the most important, but one of the ways that for groups that are interested in civic engagement, that census data is used and put in action. So we do convene a specific roundtable of groups that are interested in redistricting. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, we have redistricting more frequently than in other states due to litigation and a history of gerrymandering in the state. And so supporting groups to kind of understand what's happening with the redistricting process, what are tools that you can use as to when the districts change, how does the data or the demographics of the districts shift, and then helping them to take action on those issues. So NC Counts, because we're a coalition, we actually do have a more formal membership structure than some of the other CICs that are more, individual organizations. We do try to keep it very flexible. So we do have some requirements for participation, which is basically participating in 2 meetings or activities a year. So it's not a huge lift, but it's a way for us to make sure that we're not just like listing organizations that came during 2020 and like have not returned since, but that we're really working with groups that want to stay involved. And we do provide benefits for our members. Most of our members don't actually get funding through us, but they have the opportunity to get funding. And so we have that as a priority, that when we are able to raise resources and re-grant, I know that's not something that is available to every CIC, but it's something that we are able to provide. And then we have all the training and resources that I already talked about. And then we do recognize our members on our website, and folks seem to like that. Okay, what would I suggest for a new CIC? Some of the things that have worked for us is really we would not be a CIC today if it wasn't for Bob Coates from our state data center, who really introduced us to the network. And even before we became a CIC, was extremely helpful during our 2020 census efforts. I think Bob was at every single one of our pre-census convenings, and really also has helped us in terms of one of the things that we did after the 2020 census was look at how could, local jurisdictions challenge their 2020 census results. And Bob really helped us to understand that process and helped us to explain that process to our member organizations who are interested in encouraging their local jurisdictions to explore that option. And then I already mentioned several collaborations that we've had also with our data dissemination specialists, and I look forward to working with other CICs more in the future. Consistent communication, I think that's something that that could be a pretty easy lift for some groups, just like having a regular newsletter or something that you send out to groups that you are hoping will take advantage of your data or build connection with trusted messengers. Just having something consistent. We do have quarterly partner meetings, and we set the dates for those early in the year. We also offered 2 options because a lot of the groups we work with are volunteer run. So we'll actually have a daytime and an evening option for our Zoom sessions. And usually the evening session is a little bit less well attended, but the people who go to that would not have been able to go to the daytime session. So that's why we've continued to do that. And it helps also, that consistency helps to create a sense of belonging. So you might not want to have a formal coalition membership structure, but you might just be like, thanks for being our partner. And, we look to you to ensure that census data gets out in our state, that kind of thing. Something involving gratitude and just helping anyone that you're partnering with make it feel like it's truly a partnership and that you're building something together. I recommend starting with what you have. Even if you don't have a coalition structure, you're not really sure who your data users are, you have relationships with people in your community, your institutions. Think about how you can help. Are there some gaps? Like, are there organizations that have a certain mission that maybe with some additional data, they could be more strategic or prioritized differently? One thing, oftentimes when we're planning things, someone might be like, oh, that's not related to the census. And so they think of these as like unrelated projects. And I always say to people, there is no project that is unrelated to the census. We just have to figure out how to make the case for what, how can we use data to enrich this? Or how is what you're doing going to lead to more accurate census counts in the future? There's nothing unrelated. You just have to make the connection because sometimes people won't see it. Another thing is just thinking, can you make this a little bit catchier? So I'll give you an example. In our most recent in-person convening, we worked with Carolina Demography to do a session on using census data for grant writing. And we called the session something like, Get That Money, using census data for grant writing. And when people saw that title, they were like, ooh, I'm going to that session. It was the same session as if we had started just census data for grant writing. But when people heard that name, they just got a little bit more excited. And then, when we did the first round of breakouts, it was packed. It was compared, and we had 2 other simultaneous sessions going on. So, ask for and respond to feedback. So we survey our members usually around once a year. And then at our partner meetings, we'll have small group discussion. We'll break into the Zoom rooms so that people can have some discussion. And just not everything's going to be a slam dunk. You're going to have tools that you come up with. I'll give an example. Our communications director was doing something on social media, census word of the day, and it wasn't really catching on. And so she's rethinking it and actually looking at working with a local journalist who's well known to kind of relaunch that session, but with someone who's a little bit more exciting for people to click on in social media. So we're going to see if that works out. We just want to keep getting the message out there. So you have to try different things, and don't worry if you know, it's not as well attended as you want. The important thing is to keep trying things and seeing what comes through. And then the other thing I would recommend is just look at who is missing. Like you look at your existing relationships, start to build something, and you'll start to see some gaps. One of the gaps that we have at NC Counts is that we don't have as strong relationships with Indigenous-led organizations across the state. So that's something that we're looking at building intentionally over the next few years, you know, attending events that community members come out to, talking to the different tribal governments and seeing which ones are responsive to building a relationship with us. And just things take time. So think about where you are now and where you might want to get to with your CIC or your census outreach, and just start building it one day at a time. So those are my recommendations based on our limited time as a CIC. And then this is just my contact information, and I don't know if we're going to share slides later. I can also drop my contact info in the chat.
All right. Thank you, Angeline, so much for that. I'm so impressed. I'm nervous. we haven't been on the ball here in Texas as much as we should. With 2030, it's here, right? And so these are great ideas. I was just going to share just a couple of slides because a lot of what Melanie and Angeline shared were things that I was going to share with you all. Of course, I'm going to be sharing a little bit from the SDC, the SDC perspective. This isn't probably showing right, so let me change it over. Okay, is that okay? Can everybody see my slides? Yes.
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to just share a couple of things that we've done. I've been a SDC lead now for a little over 2 years, and when I came on board, we kind of already had an email list that existed, and it was mainly folks who had come to our annual conferences. And so what we were really trying to do is like, how can we continue to build on that list? So we started to just explore. And in addition to building just our data user list, we started also looking at media and doing some research on media, because for us at the SDC here in Texas Demographic Center, we'll get media requests or data requests from the media. And so every time someone reaches out to us, we add them to our media list. And also just doing searches on, how to build that media list. Just know, building the media list may also just make the media reach out to you. And so some people were like, I really don't want the media to reach out to, so it's up to you. But we're encouraged to do that. And as Melanie and Angeline mentioned, collaborate with Census Bureau staff to host webinars. One of the things, and I some of you may have heard me say this, but a really key thing to expanding your list is any webinar you have, especially on Zoom, or we use Zoom or WebEx at the time, do a registration to required, and in that registration you can build like a questions, in other words, have them fill out their information, but also say you can build in questions into that registration. It says, would you like to receive future notifications or be part of our email listserv? Yes or no? And so we found that as people started sharing more, spreading the word about our webinars, for the first time people were coming, and when they said yes, we took their names and added it to our list. So that was one way to continue to expand, getting their permission to be added to our monthly newsletter or whatnot. So that's really started to grow our list. Also, presence, here with our state data center, we have, partnerships with different statewide organizations. So for example, the Texas Municipal League, we do our boundary annexation survey, we do other surveys. So continuing to strengthen that with that affiliate network is really important. And so we've, of course, all of us have different resources and high level, different, varying resources. And I get that. We were able to actually become help be a sponsor at the lowest level for the annual conference at the Texas Municipal League. And we'll have a booth. And in addition to that, because we are a sponsor, we have access to their list of participants that attend. There's certain restrictions about, that list, like we can only contact them once, but already, reaching out to them and in growing that list with any partners, that's also another idea. Also, we also try and strengthen our relationships with legislators, right? How do we put data into the hands of those policymakers? And so doing a very intentional outreach to legislators prior. Here we have access to a state directory, which is constantly being updated. So new members that get elected, or their staff members or chiefs of staff, we have access to that. And so building that into our database as well. Already mentioned, we have webinars. We do that, partner with our partners. We've also just launched a pretty strong social media campaign and trying to really do, we've done now Viz of the Week. So we'll take data every week and try and put a quick chart together and put it out there. So that's also, we've started to get more followers on social media. Of course, our conference, everybody has their conference, and continuing to build your networks through your conferences. And for those of us that maybe don't have a lot of staff, or are not as big, consider collaborating with universities. Develop perhaps an internship or experiential learning for students. Maybe if you want some help with your social media communications, you can partner with a local university with that, or someone in data science. I mean, sometimes partnering with universities and getting students those experiential, opportunities is really key. I think building, newsletters, quarterly newsletters. We used to have a quarterly, now we're doing monthly. And of course, always reach out to all of us here for any questions you might have. So I just wanted a lot of what Melanie and Angeline mentioned were really helpful tools. I just plugged into a few things that we do here at the Texas Demographic Center. But as I'm showing the slide here I didn't ask for permission, but I did put everyone's emails here. So in case you want to take a quick photo of that, but we're always available to answer any questions you might have. And I'm going to stop presenting and leave it open for anybody who has any questions for our speakers and presenters. And at this point, or any feedback, please raise your hand or just chime in. I think we're monitoring the chat, and if any of y'all have pointers that have been really helpful you want to share with the group, please step in.
Monica, if I could, before we get to questions, my email address on that slide was incorrect. So I'm going to put I'm going to put my correct email address in the chat. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, look in the chat.
Please do. Sorry. Thank you.
It's okay.
I didn't double check that. I should have.
It's all right.
All right. Any questions here? I think Lamar. Yes, Lamar.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you to our CIC and SDC leaders for making this possible. And we're always learning from Melanie, always learn something new from Melanie. She was our Falcone Wade Award winner among the CICs, so just very flattered that she's continuing to be a part of our family. Thank you to our fearless leader, Doug White, out of Shreveport. One pitch I wanted to put was that we are looking at how we as CICs, and I don't know how the SDCs are, but with the CICs being more community-based groups, how we can do projects collaboratively with one another in terms of like with common interests, demographics, regions, geographies. And so I'm putting that seed in there for 2024 that we as a CIC network can facilitate the opportunity for the various CICs to actually work together. For instance, we're Asian Inc. We're based in San Francisco, kind of the center of the universe right now with APEC, but we feel that there is collaboration with other Asian American oriented groups, or even groups within our state or in our region. So just, I think as we go about our holiday business and as we close out 2023, I would put in a pitch to the CICs out there to think, how might we work on collaborative projects, data-driven projects for not just for our constituents, but for a broader group that may not be within our immediate sphere of influence, because I think we can do more if we put our minds together and come out with data products or visualizations, maps, presentations that can be valuable to a greater audience. So I'll put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lamar. Angeline, did you want to respond to that? Or?
Yeah, I just had an idea as you were speaking, Lamar. I do think it would be great if some subset of CICs could come together when the race and ethnicity standards are updated, to kind of come up with some research on how this might impact different communities or best practices on how we can educate communities about the changes, because I do think that that's going to be one of the things that will really impact the communities that NC Counts works with. And I think if we start doing education as CICs now, by the time, you know, the next decennial comes around, there will be a lot more clarity among communities that are impacted by these changes of, you know, what the new questions will look like and what the implications are for specific communities, especially the ones that might have the way that they're counted or the language change for them. So just an idea that came up while you were pitching that idea.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Yeah, I see that Mallory's saying the SDC network would greatly appreciate the insights that could potentially come from that kind of effort. So, you know, that Angeline's thinking about. So I think maybe that's something that collaboratively between our SDCs and CICs can look to work on something like that. We'll have to pull up. No, thank you for that. Any other questions from anyone? Someone else raised their hand and I can't really see. Can you, Michael? Or you can just unmute whoever and ask your questions. Yes, Jim.
It's Jim. Hi, I'm calling Wisconsin.
Can't hear you too well. Can y'all hear him?
How about now?
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. So in Wisconsin, as some of you know, we don't get really any funding from the state. We have, 1.25 positions to deal with everything related to census and demographic services. And so, kind of what I'm hoping to find out, or, I know I'm going to retire before the 2030 census, but how do you build a legacy of your affiliate network and your contacts and be able to pass that on to other people? And how do you even, know within your state community, those undercounted communities or the partners that have worked with the Census Bureau that the Census Bureau really never shares with you, specifically during that decennial process. How do you start building something along those lines and growing a legacy for your affiliate network?
Anybody have any insight on that? They could offer? Anyone?
It's a big ask.
It is. That's a really good question. And I'm not sure if anyone from our from the Census, I think some of our partners from the Census Bureau might be joining us. I don't know if anybody has any insight that they can offer, Jim, regarding that question.
I can offer a little bit of insight. I mean, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do a somewhat robust 2020 impact report, so that at least like whoever's at NC Counts when 2030 rolls around, like at least there's that written documentation of what efforts happened. All the organizations we worked with during the 2020 census effort are listed there. So, even if something happens with our internal communications network and our non-existent contact management system, hopefully someone can at least have that as a mantle. So I think that could be a starting point.
I want to echo that as someone that came into a pretty dead network. I was trying to grab any kind of documentation I could find in old folders. So if you kind of have a little bit of a roadmap of what you have done, at least for the new person when they come in, instead of completely having to rebuild, that would have been helpful for me to have. So I try to keep records of processes, of people, of changes, since I didn't really have that roadmap when I joined.
And chances are a lot of the institutions or organizations that you partner with will also have some kind of turnover, right? So sometimes relationship building is just a constant thing because new people come in and out, and people who have been there for a while have left, and you have to kind of rebuild constantly. But at least having the record of the organizational relationship, even if the individuals that you've been working with are no longer in those institutions, at least there's some record of that institutional relationship.
Thank you.
Those are great pointers. Great. Well, I think we're coming up to the hour here. So I just want to thank y'all for joining us and for this webinar. I really also just want to thank Melanie and Angeline for sharing their insights and their wisdom. I think certainly lots of great tips and food for thought as we move forward and continue to strive whatever way we can with the capacity that we have in our organizations to really continue to strengthen our relationship with stakeholders and the community. But just know that, we want to create this space where we can just feel free to, cross lines outside of your state and collaborate and get good ideas, because even if it's one or two gem of ideas that you can carry forward, that's the hope. And so hopefully we all kind of got something from that today that we can put into our New Year's resolution. So anyways, well, if anybody has any closing thoughts, I'm going to just go ahead and end this meeting. So what I'm going to try and do is I have the PowerPoints that were shared. I think I'll try and put them together into one document, and I'll make sure to correct that email for Melanie on that, and then make the recording available. I think what we might try and do is just send it back out or post it. I don't know. I'll talk to Doug and Mallory about how we can make sure it's at a place where those who couldn't come to today's meeting could access it. So just good tips. So all right. Well, I think that concludes our webinar for today. I really want to thank everyone, and we just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and a good holiday. So thank you all very much for joining us.